evening, everyone. I'll call our meeting to order at 6 p.m. here in the roll call, please.
Alderperson Silas. Macias. Staff. Simeon.
Present.
Sin.
Present.
McNeil.
Present.
Castro.
Present.
Great. I don't believe we have remote electronic minutes. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment. I know, is there anyone in the audience for public comment? We have a couple to be read.
Dear Mayor and City Council, thank you for the attractive landscaping and plantings you have planted at the site of the new parking lot at Hamilton School. With time and proper regular care, the trees will grow and the other flora as well to offset the loss of the Norway maple tree that was removed. Maybe a plaque can be placed at the site as a marker for the kids. Preserve such giants in our city's future, please. Thank you again to all, Citizen X.
And that just so the council knows, I don't know if you all got the email, but I had gotten it from or it wasn't an email, it was an actual letter. I typed it wondering what was happening with the
And the next one. Those who give up essential liberty for temporary safety deserve neither freedom nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. This is in regards to the flood safety cameras again that are being installed in our city at taxpayer expense. Citizens never voted. I would like the council to approve these cameras to prevent crime before and after installation. If this cannot be proven, why are we continuing to pay $150 to $300 per month per camera, plus reinstallation costs to citizens vandalize them, which is happening all over the country? We have numerous examples of police and city employees misusing this system to track spouses and girlfriends without approval. I will wait patiently for your response. Links and videos are in this email.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Hearing none, we have no questions on the agenda as far as I know. And we'll move to our roundtable discussion, budget work session number 1. Guess off. First Bob.
I'd be careful to look at the 55.
Yeah, no, very good news at your places tonight. Today we had a very successful fund sale, and as you recall, it was to reimburse ourselves for the purchase of the river station in the amount of $1,720,000, which was the cost of the property plus some additional improvements that we anticipate. And our ordinance that the council adopted was stating that we needed to be under 6% on the bids, and the low bid came in at 5.87%. So we are not taking any further council action. And staff is recommending that the mayor proceed with signing the documents. And we hope to close on those bonds here within 2 to 3 weeks to reimburse ourselves, and money was cash flowed out of the study.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations.
Good job.
And we're moving right into the discussion tonight. As Bob and Mayor said here, this is our first budget session for 2027-29. And as we proceed over the next couple of hours, which could be 3, I'm hoping to, we are not asking for any decisions tonight. Okay, I'm seeing getting them. He just looked at me.
No, I was looking over there, and that's where the eyes got.
But we're not asking for any decisions tonight. We are simply presenting our recommendations for more consideration. And as most of you recall, and to bring Alderman Silas up to date, since this is new, we always kick the budget off with adopting a strategic plan, which we did earlier this year. Then we jump right in and begin preparing the CIP projects that help achieve and support those goals. Because most of them are driven projects. So tonight we are wanting to accomplish 4 main things. Number 1, we're going to review the 3-year CIP plan for 27, 29. talk about changing projects. And as you know, the CIP budget makes up about 40% of our overall annual budget, the big dollars that we're talking about tonight. And I do have to say that staff, our Laura, Eric, and Denver, lots of staff have been working on this for the better part of 60 days. So it's been a lot of work to pull this together. Then we are going to review the impact on our fee structure in the enterprise fund, which support and pay for these projects, in addition to reviewing the sanitation fund. Following that fee review, I would like to take the remaining time, whatever time that is, and review the impact on each of the funds that are affected. So we're talking CIP, MFT, and all of the enterprise funds. And then lastly, I'd like to have a very brief review of our July 26th amendment, since we're already halfway through here. And just so you know, prior to getting to that, all of our funds are in very good shape. But we'll talk about that at the very end of the night. So to get started, I'll have you look at our very first slide, which is an overview of our projected fees for 27-29. Maybe I'll bring this up. And I wanted to start it off with the fees to reassure you that as we move through all the presentations tonight, that we are following plan. We say that all the time. We are following the plan that the council put in place last year regarding fee increases in the utility funds. And what we're talking here is WPC 6% fee, that's the same for South Slope, water at 2%, stormwater and sanitation at 2% as well. Overall, I put in two slides here. This first one is our projections for 27-29. And we're going to talk about this over the course of the night. But I know you'd be anxious to know what the impact is. And for 2027, you'll see that little red bolded cell up there. On a monthly basis for 2027, we anticipate these to be $3.90 per month. And amazingly, that's actually slightly lower. If we flip to the next page, David, slightly lower than what we had projected last year. And again, you have to follow down the 27 column. We had projected it to be $4.14, coming in at $3.90, and it's primarily 100% due to a reduction in the surcharge for the water, because just the timing of getting the projects done, we don't have to pay for some of the loans back as quickly. So with the fee that we have shown you and put in place on a monthly and annual basis has not changed. And so that's all for me to start off with. And so with that, I'm just going to let Laura's just kind of jump in and start with projects.
Do staff refer to them as the Laura's?
Oh, I'm sorry.
LW. Yeah. LW. Much easier. It's like the Chris and sorry, it's like you can see how.
Okay, so I'm kicking it off. My plan is to start off with some general statistics and information about our spending and our pavement condition index results, and then we'll go into specific projects. So here's a list of the categories that we break down our projects into. We have the maintenance and capital categories. Maintenance programs vary from pavement markings, joint crack sealing, patching program, traffic safety initiatives, and asphalt overlay maintenance. That asphalt overlay maintenance is our newer program to pave over seal coat streets. So we don't install seal coat anymore. So instead we put a thin layer of asphalt over it that's longer, like before. And then we have our capital projects, which are bigger projects from reconstructions to asphalt resurfacings, new traffic signals. There. So here's just an overview of our street network. We have 230 centerline miles of city-owned roads and alleys that we We had our streets rated in 2023 and again earlier this year. It was the same company that did both ratings, IMS, and they specifically looked for two things. The first is called the PCI, which is a pavement condition index. Between 0 and 100 is pavement score, basically. And the second is the percent of backlog, which is a street that's lower than 40 PCI. So that they consider that 40 PCI kind of a critical threshold, where the street drops below that, it's no longer a good candidate for maintenance. It kind of flip-flops to needing major rehab or reconstruction. So the goal is to keep your PCI as high as you can and your backlog as low as you can. So here's some results from 23 to 26. Our PCI stayed fairly steady, 62 to 61, so that's good. However, our backlog did increase from 16.3 to 20.4. I'll give some reasons in a second why I think that happened. So back in 2023, IMS presented to council their findings, their PCI findings for that year. They did recommend spending $7 million annually towards roadway improvements. Here's some actual numbers of what we spent between 24 and 25 actual numbers, and then 26 what we project to spend by end of year. So from 5.8 million to 7.3 to this year 6.4. So we're spending more than we used to, but still not quite to that $7 million. One thing I want to point out is what's shown in this pie chart. This shows the split between street reconstructions and street resurfacings. And then you can see the figures below, how much it costs to reconstruct a street versus resurface a street. So in the past 3 years, we've focused the majority of our street money towards reconstructions, whereas we could go a lot further, shift that model towards resurfacing.
So that's what I do.
That is what I figured. So moving forward, we're going to suggest kind of switching gears a little bit towards pavement maintenance techniques, which is something that this IMS consultant recommends. And it's a standard in engineering practice. It means fix your street before it gets too bad. It's simple way to put it. It's a lot cheaper and easier to take a good street and make it excellent than it is to take a horrible street and make it excellent. Swap is so the consultant has laid out a 5-year plan, which they're going to present to council, I believe September 1st. Originally scheduled. So you'll get more details on their methods.
I know we'll answer later, but I'm going to be patient for this stuff anyway. Do we have any indication of how that breaks up by category of road, especially like our main?
And I think we talked about we had to do reconstructions on main arterial driving.
Yeah.
Surfacing is we wanted to, because like if we just played the numbers, that would work. But also like I'm sure my street's pretty bad, but also it's a dead end that 40 people drive on it and probably slow down the traffic for the kids. So no one's complaining about that condition.
Yeah, it's a transitional thing. We can't just flip a switch and go straight to this model. We still have those streets that need to be reconstructed too. So we've got to kind of balance how we move forward in next handful of years.
Mayor, everybody. My question is similar, but more, what percentage of these 230 miles are alleys versus neighborhood and minor and major arterials? Because they're going to be lower priority, and I don't feel that they should be treated at the same rate as 12th Avenue.
Are you wondering if Alex are
They are bringing ours.
Yeah, they are.
And I'd like to know how much, how weighted are they?
That's an easy thing for us to kind of break it out as far as like collector and arterial roads and alleys, they kind of break them all.
And we can resurface alleys in-house in some cases that is a lot easier and cheaper than we can do a lot of alleys.
I know you haven't gotten to this slide yet, but we're ready.
Are you? I'm not sure.
What is the next?
Okay, so this is just a slide showing what the benefits of pavement management is. We just kind of talked about. It's a lot easier to fix a street that's not in horrible shape. Horrible shape. Part of the reason is because water infiltration is underneath the streets. So if you could seal it up, seal your cracks, put a fresh surface on, prevent that water from infiltrating, especially in a freeze-thaw climate like ours, it will save the pavement. So what you'll see changing tonight versus what you approved a year ago. The 2027 CIP doesn't change very much because we've already begun with surveying and preliminary design work. So we're proposing to keep that basically as you saw it last year. The main changes will happen in 2028. So for 2028, we've removed all the reconstruction projects we had proposed and shifted them to 29 or beyond, and then flipped to just resurfacing.
I love this slide. Thank you for how you laid this out for us. Because in my head, I'm like, all right, so we were doing great with investing in streets, right? Funding going towards streets, that's right. And then all of a sudden we allowed sidewalks to take precedence, or not precedence, but to grow. And then we add in 27 quiet zone. So obviously, like, we need money for that. That impacts the economy in our businesses and all those kinds of things. But is there a possibility for us to shrink the money towards sidewalks? And or are we up against the issue that I recall when some of us first came on council in 21, people sort of tried to make an argument that, like, you can plan for all these streets and they're not going to get done. I feel like you're planning for the streets and they're getting done. Am I correct?
I think they are too. We've increased our project scope substantially.
Yeah, it's not like in 21 when things were prior, maybe that was the case. So is it?
So for 26 and 27, why the sidewalk number is so high is because of the match for our federal projects. We got those 2 years. So we have, this year we've got that trail.
Yes.
Maybe.
Which is like a $5 million job. And then we got the trail on Old Town Road. And then next year we have the renovated streetscape and the Working Park. So that's what 26 and 27 are skiing.
Yeah.
So it looks more like 28, 29.
That's what we
Typically.
want.
Yeah, I sort of feel like it's a shame that we've got pushed backward, even if we can look forward to some good impact. And if there's any way to change that up, 27, is everything already engineered and planned?
No, but as far as the two big sidewalk projects with federal money in them, are matched for
Yeah,
those.
well, and I also see, like, we're finally gonna take on parking ramps and all of that, so that is where some of that money would have gone. I'm sorry, I'm going to parking ramps would have gone to streets, like, we can.
So once we get past these 6 years of trying to fix up those ramps, then shift them.
That's a new fund.
Right, we started that with just for last year.
These are percentages.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the budget between 24 to 29 is not the same. And so the 24 number could be much smaller. And so relatively 27 could still have a lot more money for roads. And so it looks like we've lost ground, but not in an actual dollars. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, and I included, there's one thing that I changed in this slideshow with what you saw, and it includes that.
Okay.
Includes what we're spending in 27, 28, 29. things to consider. IMS will present the 5-year pavement maintenance plan to council, hopefully September 1st. However, we can't follow it to a T, because we do have other things to consider, mainly the ongoing lead service line replacements. So that's a next 10-year project. So we need to be mindful of when we resurface those roads to make sure that the water service lines are first. So we're gonna have to kind of take that plan and kind of pick and choose within it. That suits.
If we're shifting to more surfacing as opposed to construction, does that become less? I mean, certainly we don't want to be resurfacing the street and have to cut a line right through it right away. But it feels like it would be less of a concern on the surface.
And you're right, it would be. But the lead service line program is gonna move a lot faster than we will with the resurfaces. So we're not gonna run out of options before they're done. So we just want to share a couple items where roadway or CIP funding was conferred for other projects. The first is 1.8 million for the drainage project, 49th Street, 2nd Avenue. And then the other is the parking ramps, which is annual for 6 years, which will total about $3. So here's the slide I adjusted. I realized yesterday that what is in your packets didn't have the full legend there in the lower left corner. So this is something that I asked IMS to prepare to show council the effect of increased budget numbers. Just so you can get a feel, you spend your money on streets, this is the effect. So they went from 7 million up to 10 million. And then down in the lower right corner is what we propose to spend on roadways for 27, 28, 29, based on the plan.
That basically keeps us level. Sort of. It, right? It's the, for the,
Yes, this combined with switching to more of a resurfacing model, those two things combined should move us in the right, start with this.
Will gain some gravel from
It's-
the long haul.
It is.
is it, I remember this conversation of us getting to like, well, at least let's try the 2 to 3 million a year. Close to the residents, but, am I correct in sort of summarizing that, like, even if we had them to do, right? Wouldn't that almost tie the hands of future councils with the amount of investment that would have to go into keeping it like that? Like, is it more prudent to use money wisely now on a steady increase versus all of a sudden, even if you could do all the engineering and all of the construction, even if you could do that at that level, it requires sustained investment because otherwise you'll have all the roads breaking down at the same time. Is that a big wrong assessment?
I guess it depends on what the council's goal is. Is the goal to get to the blue line and stay there? Then yes, there will be an increase in investment in perpetuity.
Anybody else questions on this line? Wait, so we're at 8 and 12 million. We are exceeding what their minimum was. Oh, and doing the resurfacing and construction. We're above their minimum, but not nearly what, an excellent score needs.
Yeah, we're between 8 and 9 million on average. They're projecting after 5 years our PCI would be between 60 and 61, but our backlog will go lower, somewhere around 19. So we're here.
Are there other cost saving measures? And I'm just going out of the box here, and I've suggested reducing lane sizes that save us a foot or two on a lot of roadways as we can, so that the future cost is not larger. I mean, there's other ways to make a dollar stretch further. And is this kind of is this on the radar at all?
So we are reconstructing a road, we always look at the bid, and we have reduced. But if we're just resurfacing, I think it's definitely.
I really appreciate the actual numbers. Look forward to the full presentation of the fact. I think we might have to look at how to meet some of these other things. I think this sounds great, but I've got to see it a little more in that detail. That'll tell us how we really do it. That is every road that is perfect, but I don't think we can find that balance by category.
Can you guys give us 4 years of CIP? Whatever it was. From 18 to 24, sorry.
19 to 23 before we instituted this. I think that's also sort of how it feels measured, right? We could beat ourselves up for having numbers, backlog, all that stuff, but what was it? What is the real lived experience in the city? Anything further on this slide?
Well, how much of this is inflation of cost? Are we getting 50% of the work done for twice the money because costs have gone up?
General
Yeah, it feels like our goals that we set years ago were under the assumption that things were what they were, and maybe that, but I don't want to spend 20 million a year, but maybe that's the equivalent of 10 million buckets. And that's a point we should consider.
Now look at this transition to actual project lists for the next 3 years. So the first 2 slides are our maintenance projects. These stay consistent year after year. Annual program for striping. Every other year we do joint sealing. You can see the list. So these are our standard ones. Nothing until we get in here. See for 29. And here's list number 1 of our 27 capital projects. These have stayed for the most part consistent from what you saw a year ago. A year ago, however, we did just have a blanket project for asphalt resurfacing. We haven't done for the space. Those are bigger pieces. This list page. There is one reconstruction project we are pushing off to 2030. That is 10th Avenue Place, north of 11th Avenue. That one requires a significant utility investment, and there's no dire need, for example, this year or next year. Payments will be done, so we made that decision. We can just stay to push it back. Our budgets. Here's list number 2, 27 projects. You'll see everything in red is federal dollars contributing to said project. So we have River Drive streetscaping next year, Morgan Park Trail, our annual sidewalk programs. I've got some maps and things in upcoming slides to go over some of these. Quiet zones scheduled for next year. Here's a map showing some of our 27 projects, basically west.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just had a question on that 27 project. The sidewalk infill at the high school, is that on city property or on
City. So I've got a slide coming up. So this is 27 projects, basically the west half of town, several resurfacing sites. Most of our resurfacing next year will be in the west half of town, only because of the following kinds of resurfacing. So that is how we fix the streets that we have. East half of town, couple reconstruction projects, 41st Street from River Drive to 4th Avenue, which I know has been on this for many years. So that one will get done next year, and then they will have a shared use path, some tracks. There's a section of street done by Jefferson School that is in dire need as well, so that will get reconstructed. Then a handful of intersection projects and services. Here's just a graphic of our River Drive streetscape project and its limits. Replacing sidewalk and streetscaping elements on both sides of River Drive between 12th and 19th. Project will be constructed and will be staged in such a way to try to keep as much pedestrian access open as possible. It'll be north side and then south side, vice versa. And then at the intersections, I imagine we'll do corners, one corner at a time. Here's that sidewalk infill project for the high school. It is on city property. So the last several years we have pulled back from sidewalk infills. We focused our funding more on sidewalk replacements. However, we feel that this is a worthwhile project at this one time. As we all know, 34th Street has traffic lanes that shift for parking and for bike lanes. So if we install this path at 10 foot wide, we can eliminate the on-road bike lanes of 34th Street and send all those bikers to the path because it'll be 10 foot wide all the way. Therefore, we can straighten out the traffic lanes and we can increase the turn lane length going into the base school because it's pretty backed up too.
I think that's a great project. Also, when you consider the chief and districts have, I know it's one day a year, the homecoming parade, but there are other activities, traffic that just that area, safer you can make it to get from anywhere toward the library, toward the high school.
I'm just gonna say I agree, that's a shortcut that folks used to get to high school. So sometimes I should bypass, First Street. Big long traffic that goes by there. I probably go by there, 3 or 4 times a week, so I appreciate this, yeah.
Quick question. You were looking at me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Talking about it. I'm just thinking about it. I hate zigzagging, but that's a different conversation. Will this shared use path have markings? The current, what I assume is the shared use path east of there, that is maybe just an 8-foot sidewalk that this will connect to, doesn't feel like a shared use path, but it could just be because there aren't markings to indicate it. I mean, if we're going to go this route, I think encouragement is 9/10 of that. And it is a long segment, so I think it's a good idea. I just wonder if there's any way to put center stripe lines, or if that's out of the question, all the way to 41st. If you know what I'm talking about, man. Maybe this is a conversation for different.
I think that's quite well made. It was just north of Indianapolis, where they, did I tell you that was? Carmel, Indiana, with an amazing headway, bike, pedestrian, and car. And the signage was incredible, not only on the path, but, any kind of signage that where most people would come on is better than being like, there's a huge sidewalk, and then people are like, why did you build such a huge sidewalk? Sorry. Why did you build such a huge sidewalk?
And that dash line sends a very clear message that this is two-way direction, and maybe a couple bike here or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Morning Park shared use path. You all know about it. I just put in a slide because it's a big project happening this year. Artist rendering what it will look like. Giant retaining wall. And compliance zone project is scheduled.
Um, and talking about the bridge, in the school district, this is something I asked because the superintendent could tell maybe a couple of months ago, like, when we're talking about that project, the design part of the central campus here, if they want to celebrate that. If we have it, I think we should start. So that, I mean, in the city, we should celebrate that. The education, encouragement, like lighting, farming, like the school district, and also break.
Ashley,
We can do that at the next meeting. While we do meet with them, regularly. Good point.
the compliance zone project for next year, there'll be upgrades to 5 crossings through downtown. I wanted to point out a couple of things that have changed or have been added to the project. The first is we will be installing a fence on the railroad right of way between 15th and 19th Street. So the fence already exists next to 15th, so we're just going to continue it down to 19th. And then we are also going to connect the shared use path at 19th Street right now, currently dead ends on both sides of the entrance.
Can you remind me, are these all of the crossings that are going to include, or are there additional ones after? I thought we were gonna go a little bit farther west to, like to 7th Street, because there's still 2 more crossings that, go into the more sandy community that people live right across the street. So I'm wondering why we would extend those down to where people are actually.
When we originally started the project a couple of years ago, we looked at first, which we share, of course, with Rock Island. Rock Island was not still. That hasn't changed. No, then there was 6. Then I think there was also 20. 34.
Yeah, 20, so 2030.
At 40. Yeah, so I mean, we tried. We went to the FRA. I mean, limited. So principal goal was to take care of the immediate area downtown. Well, that's how it went to the FRA. Yeah, federal. That's how it got narrowed. It doesn't mean you can go back later.
I just think it's
And,
important. I grew up on 3rd Street in Railroad Avenue. I think it's unfortunate that we would go down to where actually residents are at.
But there are residents both directions.
Right, no, I know I understand that, but I just think that's.
So now we're transitioning to our 28 capital projects. You'll see this is where the changes really start happening. We have a lot of these streets that we had originally proposed crossed out, and we're transitioning to a $6.5 million resurfacing program. Individual sites are to be determined based on what we complete with service on next year. Here's list 2. Same thing with our sidewalk programs. You'll notice a bridge maintenance project, which we'll talk about that more in a subsequent slide. And then I don't have any maps for 28 because I don't need the sites. So this time next year. Straight to 29 capital projects. So these are a lot of the projects that are 28, push back here. So there's several reconstruction sites. But then there's also a large resurfacing site or resurfacing project at $2.5 million. List number 2. Our regular things, we do have some, we are proposing to paint some lights in that large lot behind that voice. Those street lights in that lot are ours to extend their life. goes into pavement. And then for the grants, year 5 of 6 and 29. Here's a map of 29 projects. The black lines are reconstructions. Blue squares are intersection improvements. We do have the intersection of 19th Avenue and 16th Street proposed for 29 at 5 points intersection. We are awaiting word if the roundabout will work.
Yes.
The consultant is looking at it. Fingers crossed.
That's at 5 points
Like that
intersection.
both really.
I think it's great. I like it. I think
If
it
we
qualifies.
If we can make it fit, we'll try to do that.
This is smaller inner circle.
We told them to go small. So that was all of our projects, and I just have some slides with some totals of funding. So here's a slide showing our sidewalk and path funding history. I should have said history and future. This is from 24 to projected 29. We are proposing $300,000 in CDBG funding for continued sidewalk replacements. 27 to 29. Here's a slide with some information about our city-owned parking ramps. We own 3 downtown. We are on a 6-year repair plan to bring those up to current standards and improve their condition. So by 2030, we will be done with them.
Can you remind us why the 26 project was deferred?
So we deferred 26 to help fund the drainage project. And then we're providing the proposed recommendations for 26 and 27. Here's just some information about our old bridges. We are very lucky and we need to reopen 8 bridges. That is easy for a town this size. And most of them are in great shape. So 3 of them have been identified for some minor technology. So that is that bridge maintenance project that are getting included into the paint. So I wanted to bring up some information about some alternate funding that is available right now. The first is Surface Transportation Block Grant funding. So that is money that is divvied out by state. And we compete with other Illinois municipalities in the Quad Cities for that funding. They have identified $2.6 million a year, I think, for the next 3 years. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip to the next slide because it has the locations of what we plan to apply for that funding. So some resurfacing sites, it has to be arterial or collector roadways, it can be local roadways. So there's a couple sections of Old Town Road around 41st Street that can use it, and then section of 7th Street. And then the other funding that is available is Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program money. So then that is federal dollars and through IDOT. This is the funding that paid for the path that's going on 19th Street right now, and then River Drive Street Speed. That's all right there. They have increased the limits this time around that we can get up to $5 million for the project. It used to be free. That money can now be used for anything between the curves, is what they say. So any road work is not sidewalk. And you cannot apply for maintenance dollars in pathways. They're very restrictive. It's a great program. So I was hoping for some guidance from council.
So I've had this idea and I said it to Laura before, but and I learned this from David Meyer, when we connect all these segments through multi-use, over time they get adopted or used more. We heard that at the comprehensive plan feedback we had a few months ago. People were really starting to use it. So I had this thought: why don't we connect Riverside Park to the high school along 34th Street? We already have on the west side of that road, there's a path and kind of a path with some weird infill patching. And then there's an issue with a slope, so it probably needs some reconstruction there. But it sounds like a great opportunity, since they don't want anything in the curve, create a multi-use bid, at least to get us to 12th Avenue, so that we could then address connecting Avenue of the cities to that at a future time. Because if we can get people to our parks on bikes safely, I think that says a lot about the city and the amenities. So I love that idea because that came up.
To, I think the reason primary source. I think the number one thing I tell you is connections. You know, I know we have challenges. That connecting to I think if we can find something along there that's a good experience. Like I said, I think that's what we have. But it's rock to Mississippi Trail, the city that they
And Eric, I think we are planning on doing Kiwanis Trail enhancements in a couple of years. The floodway, there's some sort of bridge or something we're planning on doing. So there is a plan for
Either later this or spring. So we have the bridge.
just myself, if we do like work fresh grad with their trade. I mean that in some areas that's all.
What are our thoughts on continuing to have that full-time group? Got that first section under construction now, which gets us to the third street area. We got 3 east to 16. I mean, if we get $5 million, maybe we can improve it.
I all the places with building infections. We're gonna have to pick and choose about which ones we think are gonna be most important. Track and my only concern there is if we start talking about the $5 million request, now we're putting a whole $1 million into that trail, and so that's just a balancing against what we're asking for. At the same time, we're gonna get $5 million. But it's like, but then can't spend on other trail activity. So in my own instance, we should take that policy. That's huge.
The Cold Town Road / 38th Avenue discussion, I would love to connect the bridge going over John Deere Road to the rest of the amenities. Yeah, I don't know what the term is for these paths that naturally occur because people walk on a goat path. They're all over them. People walk in the grass there. And so it's already being used. And frankly, there's an entire trailer home down there over the village. And they don't have a lot of access outside of that area. But I found that out the hard way when the river was flooded. I tried to get through, and it took me a long time to find a way. And I ended up having to ride on Cold Town Road on the grass to get out. So I think providing access for people to get out in multiple ways. And as we're putting in Texas Roadhouse and trying to activate that area a lot more. Adding pedestrian path and connecting it to the one that we built 10 years ago. Right?
That's the thing, is pedestrian safety should be the driver.
Yep.
People are walking there, as well as just connecting of our whole network.
Maybe I'll do like a pro con list for those three industries.
One other just really, I just kind of want to throw out there, so that's possible is that, you know, that walk, there's not a walkway between, on 41st Street where it goes forward, there's always people there like trying to like dart through the intersection and traffic right there. So I don't know if there's any kind of way that we can work something instead. I mean, I know that there's a bridge not too far over, but there's Walmart. Yeah.
So I'll take a closer look at these suggestions. See which ones fit best within the grant requirements. We have our first webinar. That's really all I have. I think I got enough feedback. Questions were basically answered.
It's yeah.
Have in front of you what is planned for 26 through the 2029 budget capital, concentrating. I'm just going to go over some of the brief overviews. 26, we're really looking at the traveling screens. I'll show you a picture of those in a minute. The traveling screens are where the main water from the Mississippi, when it first comes in on the intake, that is what actually filters out some of the larger reducts in the water. So traveling screens are very important to our initial water production for us, and we need to be creating redundancy in that system. Do not you're going to continue to hear a lot about our PFAS, which is the chemicals that we need to get removed out of our water, and it's a major project that we're planning for. It's approximately $3 million. That from what was originally contemplated, I think years ago was maybe suggested $2 million. Upon further refinement and working with CMT, who is our consultant, it's upwards of $3 million. And then it's about $500,000 for the summer. A little bit over $1 million, more than what we originally started to see this as we've done studies. And then also we continue with our collector projects. We have the 3 collector locations that we're installed this year. One is at the Kone building, and then one at each of the firehouses. This is going to help us with our water billing projects and getting more accurate billing, and then also reduce some of the need to have people driving around vehicles. We're still always going to have to do that, but it'll just help us with more accurate billing. And we're also contemplating and getting geared up for, and it's actually, we're starting to look at that in 27, and then working again with our collectors in 28, but a meter replacement program. A number of our meters now are reaching their useful life or exceeding their useful life. Through our lead service program right now, when we are gaining access into people's homes, we are replacing strategically those readers and those meters in those locations. So we've started to do that systematically, so we're not interrupting residents twice. Having done other meter programs elsewhere, it can be very challenging to get into some change. So we are trying to do that for a 2-pronged approach. And then continuing to look at our water treatment plant master plan that had been developed, and following that plan, prioritization. And then, as Laura's already mentioned, we have a number of our maintenance programs that you're going to see on the water CIP projects that we continuously do. Our lead service line replacement program is in there. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into these. Carol and I are going to be doing that.
And then, also just some continued maintenance. One of the things that, I've been working with Nick and Terry, we've been talking about, our water distribution manager, is really looking at a more robust program of what we're going to do for water main maintenance. How are we going to be looking at trouble spots and to better identify where we're seeing some, not checking news to any of you with all of the water main. I hate to say what we always not going to do. The number of water main breaks we've had. Here's some of the projects that I just mentioned to you. 2026. This is a picture of our traveling screens. We have to do a full replacement. Screen number 2 does not operate at all. Screen 1 needs to be rehabilitated. You can see those are both circa 1975 to 77. They have more than reached their useful life. And those are projects that we're looking to get designed I'm actually looking at our proposal right now for the stream. In 27, we begin working on our PFAS removal, which is required of the IPA. That is a very large project. It's to remove, as you all have heard, those forever chemicals that everybody likes to call, as we all call them, unfortunately, they're emerging contaminants. And then another one that has really become top of mind is in 2028, we're looking to plan for the the replacement of our HVAC in our administration and in our lab. And we continue to spend $42,000 a year just to maintain these. In actuality, we're limping those along. They may have to be even brought into 2027, but right now we're doing everything we can to help them where they're at. Studies right now. Those are absolutely necessary to keep our lab. Here is an overview of our lead service replacement program. We have been very, very heavily involved with this project. We did secure what we call our fiscal year 25 funding. We're actually doing it now. It was delayed with the state last year. We had one of our contractors remove themselves, we had to go through all of that. Finally got that grant. We have been heavily involved in that project. We're about halfway through. I will tell you, we're looking to replace about 400 services there. We've been receiving a really good response rate. Moline has been doing a fantastic job in getting some of that, but also our administrative staff has been working very hard to do what we call a scrub of who owns what, working very closely with our property management companies that are in town, as well as working very closely with finance and updating our billing as we're finding errors and discrepancies in updating information. So there's been a lot of effort put on the upside of that. Fiscal year 26, we just are getting ready to receive those loan agreements, getting prepared for that. That's $8.2 million there roughly. We're looking to replace 851 additional services. We also received through Senator Sorensen our lead service grant for the 15th Street community. That is pretty much complete. We actually have completed all 66 services there. We have some money left over. We're actually going back to the US EPA to see if we can, with the additional money still there, can we expand the program boundaries. Don't know the answer to that yet, but certainly not wanting to give any of that money back if we absolutely cannot have that happen. With fiscal year 27, we were not approved for the loan for fiscal year 27. What I discovered, there was a project plan that was put together years ago that put a cap on the number of services that we were asking for. We have actually, because of success, exceeded what that number was. I'm working with Robinson Engineering right now to update that program, that project plan. The state, they're learning right along with all of the municipalities. They now have said, when you put in your program plan, you put in as many lead services can be done. You don't put a number anymore. Where before, when this was submitted, they wanted a number. Now they're telling consultants and cities as many as you can get done, because we've actually been raising the question even with the Miller grant that we have right now, we have been very successful in getting things done. We've had some cost savings and efficiencies, how we're laying this out. Right now, we are capped on how we utilize the money by the number of services. So we might do a great job managing the budgets and working with the contractors. And I want to also give a shout out to Aaron and Laura's team, because there is a lot of collaboration that is going on between water and engineering on these projects. And we are doing construction management in-house for inspections. That has saved us quite a bit of money, actually. And in doing that, we're going to have some money left over. Again, we don't want to give back. So we've been talking to the state. How are you managing that? And we're not getting very good answers like that. They're saying, oh, we might be able to do another 10. So they're, as I mentioned, learning right along with us on how they're managing this project. We are certainly trying to maximize those dollars as much as we possibly can. So with that, with the project plan getting submitted, the state does have what they call surplus funds every year, where other municipalities might be returning monies back. They'll redistribute them. We're maybe going to try to see if we can secure that for 2027 and have some bit of program. However, we are looking at 28 and 29, again, another $3 million for each of those years, and looking to provide about 300 services, to be replaced every year. You will see by 2035, we have to have all of those services replaced per the requirements. And Carol and I will be talking about that. This is another map that is very helpful. We've been hearing about you see our boil orders that go out, or precautionary boil orders. You see our water mains. This map is a heat map that helps us to identify hot spots. We have used that map to share with engineering, and as you heard Laura talk in her presentation, we work very closely on where we're going to be disturbing streets. We're going to have to do patches. We want to have Laura's projects that come behind, or engineering's projects come through and resurface the road after we've been in there already doing the work. So that's in theory what we plan. Sometimes water main breaks occur on these streets that we can't predict as best as we try. And these hot spots help us to do that. It's also going to help us to look at where we continue to try to identify better ways to find out what might be needing to be replaced, where we are seeing a clustering of breaks, what might we be able to do from a preventive maintenance. Here is just an example of one of the mains on 16th Street at 38 that was over there by the Walgreens. All 4 lanes of that traffic were full of water. It was quite the sight. I have to say, Walgreens was very, very understanding working with us. We worked very closely with businesses when we have to interrupt them. They're very, very understanding. But this was a linear pipe split. When those occur, that means we have to disturb a much larger construction area. So I want to give an example of that. For example, since 21 through 25, on average, we have about 72 water main repairs that we've had to do. So some years are a little less than others, depending on what. This past winter was very severe for us. This again is another identification. We're again looking at just first quarter so we can keep consistent blocks of time in the winter, but you can see with emergency lead service replacements also being required, we have leaks that we are learning of either for laterals or off mains. If we run into a lead service, we have to replace it back. It's disturbed after things. And then you also see in the other graph where again we're showing exponentially what is happening with water main repairs. Again, just looking at snapshots of the first quarters of 24, 25, and 26. Now I'm going to turn to our Water Pollution Control Fund, and in here I've identified. It's serious, so I got to go to my big bags. But again, in here you're going to see the majority of the dollars that are going for our fund equipment is really for our South Slope project. That is, by the way, I'm happy to report on track. We made great progress. You can actually see buildings being constructed. It was Greg and I were out driving in the golf cart on Monday. We have Monday meetings with contractors, and what we identified is everything we see now will almost all be below ground. So a lot of the magic and a lot of the money that is being spent there right now is all below ground. And then when you go out there, you're gonna say, well, it doesn't look like much, but boy, all the magic is down below. Where you think. It's very interesting to see how it's all being constructed. And we also have added ongoing maintenance to our lift stations. That is something we've been really concentrating on, looking at the lift stations and making sure that we're keeping those in well-maintained state. And so a number of repairs are being planned for that. There were a number of items that were not contained within our EPA loan that we had, such as furniture, some SCADA, certain equipment. We'll see that that's being planned also within this project here within this capital plan. Oh, I failed to mention, back in the water, if you haven't heard it, I know Dawn, you're here. We got the variable frequency drive, VFD grant for the water treatment plant, and I failed to mention that a minute ago. So that's $190,000. So kudos to Dawn for helping us do that, but that will help us with efficiencies, yes. And I didn't want to forget that before I got to work. You can tell I'm a little upset. And then for this year, we had $950,000 investment for the Texas Roadhouse. We are going to be putting in that lift station there. We're working very closely with engineering on that project. And then from 27 through 29, it's our standard maintenance programs that we've got in our sewer mains, I should say. There's our pictures of our water treatment plant. We also have our North Slope phosphorus removal. Again, that was an EPA requirement. That project is going well on track. We're ahead of schedule a bit. We're going to be done by November, and well within budget. So the under construction has done a stand-up job on that project. This is some of the lift stations that we're talking about. They don't look like a whole lot. There's a whole lot that goes on below ground and that operates those lift stations as mechanics. Now we're going to go into storm sewer. And I'm moving fast quickly through this because I know we've got a lot more to cover yet, so I'm moving fast. In the stormwater, you will see it's pretty lean. It's for capital equipment. It's looking at the pump station. We moved that out 1 year because we really needed to support getting another vehicle, equipment and vehicle for stormwater for their maintenance operations. And again, on the capital projects, you'll see when we actually have our contribution that goes towards engineering projects and then also our storm line. So it's maintenance work that's done. And then this is just a few pictures of some of the drainage improvements that we're doing. Again, these are some of those silent services. Nobody thinks about the ditches until it starts to rain and then the phones go off the hook. So staff has been very diligent in looking at the maintenance of our ditches and very proactive with that. And then there's that pump that was mentioned. And then I'm walking through very quickly to give you a snapshot of some other things that staff is talking about that we will need to plan for in future years. And the lime room, which is the cone many of you have seen when you walk through the water treatment plant cone, but also outside we'll store the lime. That is a very critical process for us on softening the water, which also helps to line our water main. That helps us to have ongoing maintenance of the water mains and extends the life of the pipes. So lime operation is extremely critical for our water process. And then also the chemical feed equipment. This is another project that is well within our water treatment plant master plan. These are a couple of the priorities that are coming beyond 2030, 31 is what we're planning. That's me. Unless there's any questions, I ran through that very quickly for time's sake. Thank you. You're good.
Okay, first slide talks about our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It was adopted in February of 2024 with a projected about $1 million for current year capital investment on existing parks that we have. This was adopted in 2024, but since we were working on it in the better half of 2023, we're able to implement it starting in 2024. So we're in year 3, basically 11-year plan. So it's kind of based on starting at 2025. So far, this plan has been working very well. We have a lot of public input when this was going on. We tackled a lot of big projects in the last 3 years, some really big projects. With some of the projects that are running. So, the majority of it comes from the plan. It talks about giving some funding to these facilities like Music Hill, Moline Little League, soccer. They come to us every single year in the past and say, hey, would you consider funding for a roof replacement? Would you consider funding for HVAC? And there was no real way of judging who we should give some money to. It was basically in the past who got to us first. And so the plan talks about putting money in there every year, having guidelines, and having batch depending on what we end up rates that are some safety hazard, is it aesthetics, and things that we've funded in the last 3 years, HVAC, electrical, that's it. Everything that's a brick and mortar. We do picnic table upgrades, bench upgrades. We've been doing that since about 2017, 2018. Everything is getting switched over to metal. By switching picnic tables over to metal, maybe not sound like a big deal, but staff are spending a lot of time here in the wintertime bringing them in, replacing pieces of wood, painting them. So switching everything over to metal over time saves us quite a bit, makes our parts look better. And in the next couple of years, we'll be wrapping that up. Since 2017, we've only had to replace one metal picnic table because I assume someone lit a fire on top of it and the rubber metal coating melted. So overall, we have over 100 metal picnic tables in our system. The Harold's Landing, the new dock there, that dock has taken a beating over its lifetime. Anytime the river comes up past 10 feet, it catches a lot of debris. Out of staff time and to remove that, we're looking at it took a really bad beating a couple of years ago. We were able to fix it back up. A dock that is easily pulled into the land. It's almost kind of like an accordion kind of thing. Also making it more accessible to the water with kayak, canoe, ADA launch as well. Taking something from engineering and doing some design work ahead of time for maintenance shed at Riverside to be replaced, and maintenance shed at Moline Memorial down the road. Since we've done so many big projects over the last 5 or 6 years, we're starting to go towards the smaller parks. So this year we did work at McCandless, Stevens Square. Next year we're doing it at Kiwanis and Optimus. We're calling those park refreshes. The playground is within our life cycle, so we're not replacing them, but we're updating sidewalks, fencing, benches, and we're going to do a survey to each one of those within probably 4 or 5 blocks of each park and ask them what they'd like to see. We have 5 or 6 different examples of low cost projects that we can do in that green space, or would they like it rent up to that green space? So those are 2 of the small projects, 2 of the smaller parks that we'll be doing next year. And then a couple of years ago, we presented a feasibility for Green Valley softball complex, which is very overwhelming. It's like a $11 or $12 million if you were to redo the whole thing. And so over the next probably 5 or 6 years, we'll have projects in the year updated. So next year will be shade structures as far as that plan. And then Ben Butterworth Parkway, that playground is our next playground to be replaced. That includes a river surface. I've got a picture of it right here. We were fortunate to buy a couple of these pieces last year because we received a $50,000 grant towards the end of the year to purchase it. The tower on the right side is the most inclusive tower that Play and Park Structures has ever made. So there are there's a lot of different transfer stations that people are able to wheelchair up to and get into. Some of the other pieces that we're buying, so that tower is made for 5 to 12-year-olds. The smaller playground is made for starting at 2 years old all the way up to 12 years old. That is a ramp structure. It's kind of hard to see, but you're able to wheelchair up into that. There's several different areas of play. We also have a merry-go-round that you're able to wheelchair into. Wheelchair accessible teeter-totter. Same with those are called astropods. Kind of the weird structure in the back. There's a couple transfer stations as well. This will be our most inclusive playground that we have. This is Ben Butterworth Parkway is our busiest park in our work system with almost 450,000 visits per year. This playground is one of the reasons. And so this will also have port in place surfacing. Will actually work in our favor. So when it does flood, we're able to power wash it off and open it back up as floods. Mulch floats away. We have to remove the dirt, the mud, and then re-mulch it. It takes some years. So this is going to be kind of our highlighted project for next year. It's going to be really fantastic. I did want to give an update. We are applying for the 2027 OSLIDE grant. This slide is old. It continues to change until we have our public hearing in a couple of weeks. Right now, we're looking at doing some educational signage out there, shade structures, accessible multi-use trails. So we're changing a volleyball court into grass that we can do our sports that are not baseball and softball related. As part of that, we're going to do a trail that gets up to that and then gets to the back quad as well. And then we also are looking at replacing the playground, 5 to 12-year-old playground, as a possibility as a backup to round that out to 600,000. So that's still to be determined. We'll have our public input in a couple of weeks, and then we'll actually bring it to City Council. Something I wanted City Council to consider. So 1719 Fifth Avenue was purchased a couple years ago in hopes of doing a joint venture with Western for childcare. Since that is no longer moving forward, I asked Bob if I could explore doing a pocket park downtown, because we really don't have a lot of space downtown other than Stevens Square that we just I talked to him about presenting to SSA 5, SSA 6, and the downtown merchants and kind of get what their feel was of what that space should be, because I want this part, if it moves forward, to benefit them. And I gave them an example from Michigan on the right-hand side. It looks very similar to the piece of property. They turned it into an area that helps the downtown businesses grab food, grab coffee, go there, be able to be outside. We kind of lack a lot of outdoor dining options, and so you're able to take your food or your coffee. Presenting to those organizations, they absolutely loved it. They would like a small little stage to be a part of it, so there could be a poetry reading, open mic night, comedy, something little like that. So something to consider for some type of design funding. Down the road, I want to use this schematic design as a fundraiser. Have the businesses help promote to fund this project. SSA 6, not so much. They would like to talk about some of it down the road as well. The second picture on here is something that we were talking about at B City, and Don actually played around a little bit with ChatGPT. Not quite to scale, but this used to be the location of the Paradise movie. And the Spotlight, one of the owners of Spotlight, shared some pictures that it used to be a theater. So the kind of popped up that Paradise Park kind of made sense. And then we could do some type of themed murals of the theater. I presented that, they absolutely loved the idea. So this is just another rendering that could be, so kind of council consideration, which could be a really cool spot for them to.
I love that reference to the arts because that will, Fifth Avenue, when it's anchored by literary arts with Atlas, and then you have theater and had South Conservatory, but with ballet and all of that, like, it makes sense that there's that awesome arts history there. Yes.
I'm glad that you guys didn't think back, but to that point, I've had several people look at that area as a campus, right? It's like an open campus for, when I look back at the Arts Commission that's created, public arts plan, that wasn't included because we didn't own the property. Right? But, you know, we have regional examples where it's like canyons and murals. I hope that we do incorporate art into that site because of its location and that maybe not just murals but sculpture because it's the front door of the Dispatch Arcus building. It's all of the businesses down there. It's, I'm glad we own it. I'm glad we're moving forward. I'm glad we're carefully considering.
It would be a miss to not coordinate any of that with.
Oh, for sure. That's something that was discussed with the downtown merchants and how to incorporating that into whatever design they do.
Can I ask a few questions before wrapping it up, Paradise Park? For Kiwanis and Optimus, are we reaching out to those organizations to ask if they want to help fund these? Okay. Have they said yes?
We have not reached out to them. I've talked to one of our board members that just retired off the board. Actually discussed about when we set up the time that he would help promote it and make sure that they give some help volunteers.
So with that in mind, with Optimus, I know because I live near it, the pavilion, I don't know what we call it, the shelter. It's been there since I was, has there been thought about expanding it? It's a very used park, and I know one of the downsides was, well, we need a bathroom, but do we need it? I mean, that's like, do we really need plumbing? And there hasn't been, and since forever. Just to give more picnic tables and shelter and opportunity to congregate.
So you're kind of thinking what people are thinking is allowed to have those organizations make help sponsor, just like at Riverside. Organizations that sponsor whoever sponsor.
And then I guess with Paradise Park, my biggest concern is that we have River's Edge redevelopment. We have all these incentives for development. Housing is a #1 priority for this council. We have a place that used to have a building, it was a movie theater, but still, people want to move downtown. And I know that Streamline had their students do mock-ups for housing in that spot. Why are we pushing so hard for a park when there is a park at Stevens Square? There's a park that encompasses the entire northern part of the city a few blocks away at Riverside, the river. I don't think we have a shortage of green space downtown. We do have a shortage of housing, and a park will be an ongoing expense, even in its like most responsible form, with no greenery and no maintenance. It will still require maintenance, graffiti removal, and other things. Whereas housing will generate revenue. So my preference is housing on that spot. I don't want to get too vicious about it, but I feel strongly about it.
I take it. I think I'll counterpoint to that there was supposed to be another housing. It's been 1 and 2 projects. They encountered issues with the neighbor, right? And that's partly why that project doesn't exist. So are we gonna continue to fight for a really small square footage, if you will, for a few units and have it be empty for however the heck long it takes to get the housing project going there? Or are we gonna put it into good use? That's 100% gonna be an amenity, especially for the housing that's right across from it. There's plenty other places, like our housing need isn't just in downtown, it's the whole city, so we don't have to look at every single spot in downtown that's housing.
And we can go back and forth, but I just
thought I'd put it out.
I want to make my point known. You know, this doesn't need to be a park. It could be housing. It could be 12 units within current height standards without much of an issue, and they could be large 3-4 bedrooms that could generate decent rent for whoever owns it. And we have River's Edge redevelopment zone, which would fall into this category. And so we're kind of pissing away that opportunity for a park that again won't generate, in my opinion.
Has anyone expressed any interest in buying parcel?
My office.
I like talking about it. I think exactly what goes in there and how we will locate is a consider some of the street ladder things that students had looked at. I mean, I'd love to take a wider think about it in some way. Which I know is kind of a lot of small little space, but I think it's also a place where really big idea. You know, so many times we're locked in. The community has that great coming back to. When we talked about it being popular, I like that it's really more, adult bench space. I think that makes sense in the area of the playground or something there.
It's too small, so it's only 40 feet wide. So, I mean, I explored that before I spoke to Bob about it. It's just not, it's not really, that space is not really made for anything else.
Yeah, and I like that direction. I think as we put that out to the world and see if there was somebody who thinks that they wanted to develop their housing, maybe I can say it, talk about it, but that's not there. I'm not sure it's going to there.
I shared with the full council an email I shared with you and Mr. Carr, and probably copy you guys on it too, but we have a public art commissioner that shared a really great idea for a small brick and mortar term I'm looking for, but shops, micro shops basically, where they can go from having a studio in their home to having an actual brick and mortar studio. And wouldn't that be a cool little, almost like Kindle art kind of experience for entrepreneurs? So there's an entrepreneurial piece that could be in between what you get in the community for housing versus what you get for a park. And I don't know where that information is sitting right now, but it has been shared with everybody. It's based on a situation like that in Sterling, Illinois. And so I think that deserves some love by CBD. Okay.
That idea was really interesting. The town just bought a bunch of top sheds and set them up with power, and the rent was, abysmal for the how much? So, but it's like, and especially in the summertime, it becomes an activated destination for people to go to. I like that use, and you could incorporate public art in there too, and help. And I've seen them work with restaurants, but like, I don't know what the standards are, but yeah.
I like it too, because the square footage that a small entrepreneur like that needs is not a whole storefront. And that looking at the gallery, the gathering gallery, they can't find stuff that they can afford in the place that makes sense for arts and engagement, right? And community building. I have hope that they will, but yeah, for small entrepreneurs to have a cool, well-designed space versus like here's a shed. You don't want it to look terrible, right? can look at Dunbury and reflect kind of these examples. Like, that could be. Anything further?
Last thing I'll say about this, if it were to move forward, we're kind of discussing earlier this summer about having people from SSA 6 and the downtown persons be part of the design process and actually have public input. We wanted to benefit the businesses.
I know, I know where you see the environment. So it's staff is looking at 28 projects. Is there anything in that plan that looks at park property if it's like less program? We could fall under this. But are we thinking about that?
We could look at it as part of the design process, make sure that it doesn't line up with the specific.
It's a pretty plain speaking, I think they could do a heavily detailed plan, the and they just that's it. There's a lot of different project oriented details that we could actually look to insert budgets going forward. It wants to validate very exhaustive about that. Yeah, it's very exhaustive part. It's actually well written. So I think that's been an excellent. Thought we would do that as long as yeah. So.
He talks about the 28-29 budget. Once again, several of the first ones are repeat. 28-29 will change. Projects will get shifted around based off of things that come up throughout the year. For example, the Herald's landing dock as well. But 2028, we're looking at doing we start budgeting some trail maintenance. Some of the trails have been Butterworth and some of the other ones that we've done in the past. We want to do the preventative maintenance. Also look at Sylvan Island. We start really getting towards 29, 30. We've almost hit almost every single part of some sort of nature. That does not mean that we're done doing this. At that point, then we'll look at security lights, more sidewalk updates, bathrooms, but really start fine tuning some of those parts that we haven't really touched in the past. And you'll see maintenance garage 2028, 2029. Those have been in the budget for probably the last decade. They keep getting pushed back. But I will say, for example, we've got $125,000 backhoe that we grades cemetery that sits out all year long. We have headstones that sit out there. So things that should be inside. That's why we're hopefully going to get to that. Green Valley, once we do the shade structures, we're going to upgrade the sidewalks and then concession upgrade. The concession upgrade in 2029. Our biggest revenue source is concessions. It's around $300,000 to $350,000 a year. We do very well with what we have. But showing what we've done at the swimming pool, and if we could do that on a larger scale at
This time we'll take our last presenter. Oh no, we have two more presenters. Denver and Harold.
And if we could go to the very last page, just very briefly, I want to give you a quick update on the financials.
There you
go. That's in the packets. And first of all, I have to say, They're just doing a great job managing the budget. As you know, other than property taxes, revenues are pretty. You know, there's charges for services, and tools, but there's a limit on how much you can really increase those fees. So the primary revenue source is taxes. And as you know, last year, in the past, we've been trying to increase it about 3% here, which is actually under $100,000. And so we reduced it last year, budgeted funding, adjusting. We take a look at their operating expenses going forward. Eric is presenting an operating budget that on average is only increasing 2.3% a year for each of the years through the year. That's something we're gonna have to continue to monitor. The goals and everything else is included, but not just trying to really staff with a very limited budget. We have included potentially the increase in property taxes at the 3% level for each of those 3 years, and we'll talk about that in October, once we actually get our assessed value. Going down to it's in blue there, you'll see the transfers in from the CIP fund as well as the general fund. There's 400,000 from CIP projects. And then the general fund, $1 million, again, those are flat revenue sources. So the only one that's making any movement at all is property. And then the ending fund balance as we head into the 29 year, he's got some excess reserves right now because of capital projects being carried over in 26. But by the end of 29, even with the 3% potential in property taxes, the fund balance will be at 22.78. It is within the fund balance of 20 and 25, but it's in a little bit of a decline. Good to go. Budget somewhat close to this. So that is the end of the first section of the presentation. So we're going to rapidly move into the next. Go ahead. And so the next one is our fee reviews. So we're going to show the impact of these projects and what the effect is on our. Start us out. And some of these, you've already seen some of these slides.
And this is the mentioned enterprise fund fee and financial update. So just again, highlighting a couple of the major areas of where we're making investments right now at our water pollution control facilities. At South Slope, as you know, that was driven by nutrient discharge limits and aging equipment there. We received an IEPA fund, and we got $120 million in a 30-year term, 1.96% interest, which is remarkable. We have IHC that is our contractor. Council awarded a bid to them for $113,862. 3.4 is contingency, and then we also have design, and then that's what makes up that $120 million. And then, as I mentioned, we have begun construction back in 25. We are well on track for completion of Moline. Schedules. We had a little bit of a slow start, but we're making a lot of progress now. North Slope, I already mentioned, we anticipate that completion in November this year. And then our collection system, we're going to do a third year of smoke testing. That is going to start in August. We have RJN is coming back for a third year to do that. As a recap, sewer revenue fund, we have our wholesale regional customers, we have our residential, and then we surcharge certain customers based on the strength of their waste, such as laundry, restaurants, grocery, bakery, and freeways. Sewer recommendations. We are looking at a sewer rate, a rate increase of 6%, which was implemented for retail and wholesale, as Carol said. Stay the course, that was what was planned. Another 6% was planned for 27 through 29. We had seen that again last year, still staying the course with that. And industry standard is to be about 30% plus or minus some extra.
And as you know, as part of qualifying for that along with the 135 hectares. We've committed in the future.
Then this is what's giving you a proposal, what we're looking at for the rates. As we mentioned, the base charge would be going up 6%. That's what you see in the green. And then the commodity rate, which would be going up an additional 6%. This chart helps you to see how we compare to our surrounding communities. So we appear to be right in line. Davenport tried to get hold of the numbers. It was hard. Some of these numbers are difficult to do the conversions because everybody does their sewer rates and their water rates differently. So we did the computations. Some are harder to find. Private companies aren't as readily available in sharing some of that information. So we have to do a lot of digging to do that. But try to give you a comparison here between Davenport, East Moline, and Rock Island. We're right in keeping with all of our surrounding communities. Again, you'll see in red what we're looking at for 27, and then what we're projecting out for 28, 29, which again is at 6%.
Other things, so I might add, other than Davenport, I don't even see it there, other than Davenport, which right now we don't know if they're going to be in our years. Currently, even with our 6, 6, and 6, we are still lower than East Moline and Rock Island.
Here, I have a question for you for member of council. When we see Davenport, of course, it's an Iowa American Water Works Association. So the rate that we're seeing here that you reduced somehow, it is a private company, obviously, but they're spreading their rate not only over the city of Davenport, but also the city of Davenport. So you're looking at over 150,000 customers. So there's really no direct comparison.
Right.
Thank you. Next. Carol, this is a history that you prepared.
This is the increase that made in the sewer rate, and then at the very last line of the very end of the day, we're going to show how just that individually by year, this is our projected increases. For 2027, in the sewer fund, if we increase the rates in the yellow box, we increase the rate 6%, that will give us an additional $608,000. And again, we are working our way up to, in 2031, we're going to have a debt service payment on Southwell exceeding $5.3 million. So it's incremental. It's all working.
Moving on to stormwater. Historically, the stormwater utility created in 2002. To the Utilities Department in 2019. Since that time, we've made an effort to make stormwater utility more sustaining with the sustainability plan that's coming forth before council. There's a large share that is talked about the stormwater continues to be very important as we move forward in our organization. The master plan was approved in 2023. There'll be more information coming forward with some ordinance revisions that came out of the master plan this game. You will see those back in September. And then here we're seeing proposed monthly charges for 2027. Again, this was all in keeping with what was planned in our plan last year.
Yes, and it includes the 2%.
2%, excuse me, the 2%, which is on the next page. This is some pictures of some of the projects that we've done with those spots. It's a pretty lean budget, and staff has been very efficient with what we're doing for maintenance of some of our ravines and our embankments. And then here, as Carol mentioned, it's proposed 2% increase to 2027. And again, you'll see in the charts where we're showing comparisons. We are again very comparable to what we are seeing with our surrounding communities. And then this is a slide that has been in this presentation a couple times to give you a couple of years now. Give you an understanding of how we do that for larger tracts of land, how we do that, and again, comparable to what our surrounding communities are doing. And then here again, the historical overview of all of the rates that we've had over the course of the years, and Carol has compared down below in the yellow, you'll see the 2% and what that means for us on an annual basis.
So 2% is in G, 2% increase, but it's only $45,000. So it doesn't go a long way, but it certainly is an increase.
Now we get to our water system. Water debt, water treatment plant debt, meter replacement debt was retired in 2024, just in time for us to start talking about meter replacements in the coming years. Our lead service line replacements began in large scale in the spring of 26 and will actually continue through 2030, 35, as you will see here in a minute. We have our water treatment plant facilities planning was completed in the fall of 25. That plan that was prepared by Strand is what's our guiding post to help us identify priority strategic investments in the next 5 to 10 years, which we already provided you an overview of what that was. And council had said there were 36 property owners who had responded and actually had replaced their lead service lines prior to the council saying we were going to pay for those. Staff reached out to all 36 homeowners. Out of that, 14 actually sought reimbursement. Some had gotten grants or didn't seek the reimbursement. We have closed out that program, so that is done. So we have 14 residents. Some didn't have the documentation we needed to make sure we could document that it was actually for the lead service line. Actually had a few people documents things that weren't necessarily complying with our project here. So we're happy to report that we are now done with that project. Then here, we are showing here.
This is a new chart that we have put together, and what this is showing that since 2004 through, we kind of cut it off at 2022 comparison purposes. We have been on a trend where we are actually reducing the usage that's going down, but with billable usage by 1.5%. And so if you look at that trend line, what that means is basically over the last 20 years, our usage has dropped 30%.
The last how many years?
20.
Over the last 20 years, it's dropped 30%. And as Bob said, actually that could be a good thing. I mean from a standpoint of, say the words. Yes.
I mean, water conservation.
Yeah, water conservation, that's
the
where it
last. All the technology, with your faucets, your taps, everything is designed. Wasting water. Plant. Even though this blue light down here, well, maybe we should be selling more water. Maybe we should sell it, but that same blue line that applies to us also applies to the paint. Well, so I mean, it's the law of diminishing return. We're going to produce what we need to do. Should be a question that is we continue to produce at the level we produce production. Before to find them, we need to look at that from here. That's just food for thought.
What this is showing, as you know, the last couple of years, we've been increasing our water fees by 2% a year. The usage is going down 1.5%, so we're really only making up about 0.5%. And it's not sustainable regarding the fee for our operating on the rate of cost of our aging infrastructure.
This is the argument for growing city and density.
Yes.
Because we've lost population over the last 10 years. Very, that's just slowly small, but slowly. And
Yeah, we just kind of wanted to give you a snapshot. And as we go forward in the next couple of years, we need to be looking at some alternative revenue sources potentially, and not just having to rely on increasing. And then the next one I'm going to have really quick for everybody. I worked with Laurel to put this together. Again, this is just to kind of give you a feel of where we're going. And Or I'll let you take the first couple of those.
We'll tag team these. What Carol and I have been working on together is to give you a snapshot from 2025 till 2035, 36, what our lead service line replacement program needs to look like as we're thinking through not only the financing of it, but what do we need to complete in order to be in compliance with all the regulations that are coming through the US and IEPA. So what you've seen up on the very top line in yellow is the amount of grants we know we've received for 25. That's that grant that we received from the IEPA I mentioned previously. We're doing about 400 lines currently. We're in that project. We also received that $625,000 from the Sorensen grant. We have completed 66 lead lines. 26, we have another 851 lines on tap that we're looking to start, which will be a real big lift for this next coming year. Sheridan 27, we're hoping to get some money. We see that remains to be seen. We're really working hard to try to get some additional money. But then you can see in 28 through 2035, we're projecting out that gradual increase of 3 million, then we bump up to 8 in 2030, because we need to start going back to replacing about 800 lines a year to be able to accomplish at the end of 2035 approximately 6,800 lead service lines that need to be replaced. And I need to share that that number is somewhat fluid, because every year when we call them one-offs, when we have the main breaks and we discover water main or water lateral lines that need to be replaced, replace them at the time, have to. Then also, as we're working with the field crews and looking at what is physically out in the field, we're continuously updating very old data. And as was mentioned when Lauren was talking about even when we're doing our street CIP programs, in order to take advantage of these grant programs, there are certain census tracts we have to stay. So our concentration has been in those census tracts to begin with, so that we can utilize as much of that money as possible to stretch city dollars before on the back end, we're going to be getting into areas of our community where we may not have as much luck or be able to satisfy grant requirements would be the better way to say that, in order to satisfy that based on census tracts. So that's why you're seeing somewhat areas that we're concentrating on. It's not because we're ignoring other parts of the city. It's to exercise the use of money as much as we can.
And so what I also wanted to show, as we look at those 3-year fee schedules, what we've always seen in the past is the amount we're increasing fees per year. So if you look at that middle line, and this is the surcharge water, you'll see in 27, and it matches up with that sheet we talked about previously, we're only going to be going up 7 cents. And then we're going to go up to 72 cents, and then 40 cents in 29. And then going forward, you can see the surcharge, and this is on a monthly basis. What I have never really presented to you before is the cumulative effect. So now look at the blue line, and that monthly charge, cumulative, is adding up through 2026 to reach $8.01. So within 10 years, again, it's not happening tomorrow, but over a 10-year period, we will have to, because of the EPA mandates, we will have to increase the surcharge to $8 a month to pay for these lead lines on an annual basis, go down to the light green, and want to put it in bright yellow. It's up to $96 potentially in 10 years just to pay for the lead service line. And then, I'm not trying to give you bad news, but as you know, these loans that we're getting are for 30 and 40 years. So it will top out in 2036, but will continue on for another 20 to 30 to 40 years. So just wanted to.
But they are zero interest, I mean.
No, correct. We're trying to grab as much money. Correct. We have to do it. We are hopeful the money continues at 0% or at least a low interest.
I mean, the alternative is finding that those funds in our directly to infrastructure.
Am I correct in understanding?
Yeah, but just, I mean, just in the magnitude, is if you look in it's the second row down, the loan amounts that we're looking at, net of the forgivable portion, in the description, we project needing $58 million over a 10-year period. We're thankful with those loans are available. Anyways, we just wanted to give you guys a feel for that. I don't want to have some crisis. It's not happening tomorrow.
Any idea how compared to other communities we're doing our better places?
They're all, different communities are funding them all different. In our community, many communities are supporting that 100%, such as. But across the country, exponentially, we're seeing water rates increasing up to 3, 4, 5 times in a much shorter period of time than what Moline has been doing. You have been very, very pragmatic in looking at a gradual increase, so it isn't a major impact. I was talking to someone else in another community, and they're looking to increase like 40% their rate. And then we started having a conversation of, well, then what's it going to do with all the inability of people to pay bills? Now we're shutting off water. Now we're turning back on water. You're going to have to increase in staff to do all of that, finance with all the customer service. So it's really a larger issue. And as we're presenting to you the larger picture, the gradual increase has the least amount of impact to our residents, but there's an impact to residents. And then it's coupled with aging infrastructure, because even though we may have a need to sell less water, we may be selling less water, our system is our system. You're not going to be able to all of a sudden stop and not do this main or cut off this part of our system, because it's water looped system. And we still have to have investments in the water treatment plant because we have to produce 6 million gallons of water. Now that's why we continue to explore regionalization for water supply. Are there ways where we can partner with our sister communities, sister and brother communities, and ways to be more efficient on how we're not only doing water, but sewer as well, as we consider all of that. And it becomes a regional approach and how we're going to do that with sustainability of our infrastructure.
I appreciate bringing all those numbers to us later. The water fund is an enterprise fund. And people may complain about how much it costs and where it is, but I've not had anyone say that we should work that. I also think when I think about increases that we see on that basis, for me, my goal is always that whole picture to keep the total of our fee increases under $100. That's always what I'm pushing for in my goal. And that's inclusive of property tax, fee increases and all that, because there's we know that there are fee increases, and that's not going to change. And it's, you said we've been planning for years, and the Department of Commerce let us forget about it. Way back before we were required to get started. So I'm just thinking some of those things through. It is enormous, as you say, and it's a bigger portion than it always has. But we'll just have to balance all those pieces in order to
I didn't have time. I just wanted you guys to see that. I had never really.
hopefully the grants increase.
That's what
Closer to the budgets.
And if I may, we're working right now with our consultants for PFAS to see if there's an opportunity to secure some low interest loan monies there as well. In fact, I've asked them to another project plan we need to be putting together and waiting to get that proposal so you may see for and the dollar amounts that utilize that to try to secure as many grants as we can.
Then those next couple of slides, which shows the impact. And the good news is on this slide right here, as we're starting out doing some increases. If you look at the bottom line there for 27, 28, and 29 at the bottom, we are the lowest Davenport, Moline, and Round Island. So even though we're gonna be increasing our fees, we still are lower currently than our surrounding communities. It makes you feel like you got a little wiggle room. And I think that's all. We'll get ready to say.
Alright. Take it away, just make sure you speak up.
So sanitation fund, just a quick review of what's in that fund. It's refuse, recycling. It should be noted that recycling contract will be in the first 28. It's a 10-year contract. So that contract, we have roughly about $700,000 that year with Davis. So we are now going back out to bid. Makes me more nervous to see the price after 10 years, to see the cost for recycling. So I'd like to do an analysis to see what I can bring it in-house, just for comparison's sake. So, just because. Also, brush collection, art waste, bulky waste, and weed vacuuming, the cost for seasonal waste is also included in sanitation. The fund itself, we're going to continue to follow the plan at 2% for 2027 to 2028. After talking to Carol, we are recommending an increase to 3% in 2029. This will help us maintain those cash reserves as we are seeing operating expenditures that will go up as well. Anecdotally, for our automated side loaders, within the last 7 years, those have increased about $100,000 per truck. So we're probably still projecting those for the next 7 years. For comparison's sake, we are still remain very competitive with other communities and flood cities. We do have room. Those recycling contracts do go up slightly just to remain competitive. I think our service has not suffered because of these rates. So I think we're in very good shape for the rates. This is just a breakdown between refuse and recycling. Again, it's a very modest increase each year for refuse for 2029. And then the increase for recycling is again modest for 2029 itself will be determined by a recycling contract or bringing it back in-house. In terms of fee increases, we are currently reviewing those, looking for yard waste stickers, bulky waste pickups as well. I think we're slightly behind other communities with bulky waste collection. We're at $40 for the first and second collection, which I think is pretty behind. So we are looking at those rates. Here it's just a breakdown of historic and future increases for 2026.
Now we get into the fun part. So I'm going to try to get some energy because I know everybody's feeling tired.
And only 2 hours we're working.
I'm going to give you very good news as we go through these next slides very quickly. Okay, are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because if we can knock this out, it's a huge lift is going into the 27-29 budget. That if we kind of have a really good feel where the enterprise funds are, then we can concentrate on the rest of the operating funds, primarily general fund. Very first fund, I'm going to go very quickly. CIP fund that funds all of Laura's projects are made up of two main revenue sources, our home rule sales tax as well as all of our utility tax. This fund, if you look at the bottom line, and I'm talking the bottom red line, if you have it in front of you, it is right on target. Between those two sources, we try to keep about $600,000 in the fund balance. Everybody with me? Try to keep about $600,000 in the fund balance. For 2026, we have capital outlay. It's kind of the middle of the page of over $16 million. We had some projects that were deferred from 25 carrying over into 26. Primarily the Arsenal Bridge is one of the very biggest projects. But going forward, we're right on target with everything that Cora has laid down. We are projecting that the home rule sales taxes, the revenue on the top line, is going to be going up about 2.25% a year. Very achievable. That's a conservative estimate. And our gas and electric, we've actually budgeted it flat. You'll see 2.3 million for each of those years. So we are hoping, even if, well, first of all, we hope the revenue is going to go up so that we can potentially even add more projects. But we're being very conservative, so we feel confident that we will be able to complete the projects as presented in CIP. So just mirror everything I've just said for MFT. Those fund balances, if you look at the very bottom of the page, are closer to 800,000. Our fund balance policy is trying to keep a minimum of 300,000. We've actually been trying to keep about 500 more. And the reason why is so that we can easily accommodate change orders that come through or some special projects that crop up throughout the year. Like all of a sudden we need to do a special project. So we've got a little bit of money there. Our MFT revenue has been flat over the last few years, and that's also a reason we're just trying to be conservative. We want to make sure that we have ample funds available to complete the projects. Any questions on those two? The water fund, go two down, one more. Nope, I'm sorry, one back. We always like to concentrate on the cash flows. And in the water fund, we've been talking about the lead service replacement lines, the surcharges, and everything that's happening in the fund. I'm going to take you down to the green line that has the red box. We anticipate at the end of 2029, is everyone there, that our cash reserves are going to be gradually going down to about 25.24%. That is the actual minimum that we want enterprise funds to be. We don't want to go down to 20. Because if we have breaks or any problems of any sort, we've got to be able to cash flow. In order to get us there, right now, based on what we know, has increased, again, chemicals, increased labor, increased utility costs. And we've got a lot of professional services that we're paying for design for projects coming in. We believe we may need to increase rates 3% and 4% in 28 and 29. We are good for 27. We're staying the course at 2%. So as we get better information, as we head into those years, we may be looking at 3 and 4%. In the water fund, 1% increase equates to about $100,000. So when you have a water break, for instance, that 1% can get chewed up in a hurry, just depending on how big it is. I do also want to highlight, I'm going to go quickly. It's not highlighted there, but about 6 rows down, you'll see projected PFAS settlement money. We've been getting some significant settlement money that we knew we were going to be getting, and we're going to continue to get. It's trickle down over the next 10 years, depending on when we are actually needing to implement the replacement of the PFAS. We may be coming to council if we can secure a 0% or low interest loan, because as Laura said, that project has grown from 2 million to 3.5 million. We may have council consider, again, this is another whole year out, so it's not even in 27, a whole year out, may consider trying to get a low interest loan using the settlement money, if we can get it for 30 years, to pay back those few years, and then that will help us keep the increased fees down. We're just going to try to spread our money, just so you know that's out there. But it also is a matter of if there is money there.
If I may, Karen, what I've learned is that it's very competitive with those low interest loans, and the EPA is really identifying communities where they've had violations for PFAS. So they're giving the money there first. The fortunate side is we have not had that. We want to keep it that way. We teeter close sometimes, but we have not had that. We have to put those all out on the computer every quarter. We provide all of that on our social media, but We monitor that very closely with that. We have a great lab, great water staff. So that's what's allowing us to, but back to even the chemicals. We're seeing exponentially chemical prices increasing, and that's exactly what helps us with our water quality.
Again, I just want to also state that the main goal of each one of these enterprise funds, so all 4 of the enterprise funds we're talking about tonight, number 1 is to simply break even on the operating, so that we have fees that pay for our operating, our labor, our operating costs. Number 2, that we have cash reserves to pay cash for any of our capital projects as needed. And then also have money available to pay for any loans, debts, debt payments that we might have. So we try to keep that fee down as low as possible. So you go down 2 slides, David. There's all for the next 3 years, as Laura's already gone through, all the capital that is the main driver in that fund. So it's funding all of that with those fee increases. And I'm going to go right into WPC. So if we go to the next cash flow, David. One more down. Perfect, that's it. And again, I'm going to have you go down to the blue, it's not blue, it's the second green line, if you're with me there. We anticipate by the end of 2029 that our cash reserves are going to be about 88% of our annual operating. Again, we're trying to up those fees so we're able to pay debt services coming forward in 2031. This fund is absolutely working as planned. I don't anticipate there to be any problems. Very steady revenue stream. We talked about how we have already committed ourselves to those fee increases, and they're pretty much locked in, but they're working. They're doing the job. They're paying for the capital. So unless all of a sudden we have a huge change order, and I mean massive, that would be a
Don't say that.
no. But I mean, right now we are
We've
budgeting.
kept them at bay, so no.
Right now, the Southfield project is 132 million, and we have the 120 million dollars in loans. So over 5 years, we're going to be drawing those reserves down about $12 million. So everything's working as planned. Any questions on WPC? We will hop right to the cash flow on stormwater. And on stormwater, again, we're going to go to the 29, one more down. Oops. One more down, sorry. There you go. If we take a look in 2029, we anticipate with the plan in place with all the capital projects that were presented, we will have about 30% in our cash reserves in 2029 if we have that 3% increase in the outer year. And 30% sounds like a lot of money, but if you look at the cash flow, it's only $400,000. So that can be chewed up in a hurry again if there's a project or anything like that. But this fund is working very well. It's getting a lot done. And I don't have a lot else to say on that one. And then lastly is our sanitation fund. And again, it's being managed very well. We'll take a look at that very last. Yep, thank you, David. It's in bolded in red. You see that in the 29 for the cash reserves. We've got 778,000 reserves in 2029, or about 52%. And you would say, well, my word, why are we talking about raising the fees 3% in that year? It's because we're trying to save money, because in 2031, 2 more years out, we have projected $1.6 million to pay cash for 3 new hackers that are about 550,000. So if we just incrementally keep that fee, you know, it's working great. We don't have any bumps in the road. It's all working very well. And so the final sheet is, yep, if we take a look at those fees again, you kind of see, you know, 2 right there. That was what we started it out. Again, no surprises for 2027. We're staying the course with the 6% for WPC for 2027, 2% in water for the general operating, a surcharge of 7 cents or the first round of loans being paid back. 13 cents in stormwater for 2%, 24 cents a month for sanitation. And those 4 funds, if we stay the course with those fees, are balanced. They're balanced for 27 and they'll be balanced for the next 3 years. We feel really good about that.
We're basically following a straight line projection methodology as compared to what we were in 2021. Nothing really hit. The rates would fall forward. It's pretty stable, across the board.
Yes, it's much easier, and I know it's hard as well, but if you just incrementally just do a little bit of an increase to stay pace, you know, it's the thing. So that's all I have on the fee review, and in 2 minutes, I can tell you about the amendments, but you don't even have to open your book. It's hard to believe, we have hit the 6-month mark of our 2026 year. I literally can't believe it. It's halfway through the year. The budget amendments as presented, and there is, if you were to print it out, it is an inch thick. Everything you want to know about the amendments are in this book, but there are no surprises. We have adjusted everything for council action that has occurred from January 1 through June. We've updated all of the capital projects. We have tweaked some of the revenues, and we do have some revenues that have fallen a little bit short. Like our hotel motel tax, unfortunately, is down a little bit. Those types of things, but then they get offset because some of our licenses and permit money is up. And but it's all kind of balanced out. The net result is our general fund. We had adopted it to be at 22.1% within our fund balance range. 22.1. The amended is actually 23.02%. I'm praying to be in the year within that, but everything, it's going very well. And there's all the funds you can compare. We already went through all the enterprise funds, but there's some small loans, you know, some of the grant funds that vary ever so slightly, but there really is no surprises here. Your directors are doing a great job. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's all here. It is all here. And we would like this to be on the agenda in August. And then we'll kind of wrap those numbers. And this is the first round of amendments. We'll amend it again in November. But it helps us with the budget so that we get everything squared up before we present this to you.
Anything further from the council? Hearing none. Is there any public comment at this time? Is there miscellaneous business? I'll save it for next week from my perspective. Let me get around first. One second. And where I start. Thank you.
I will be gone next week, sweating profusely, riding my bike across iron.
It's a hilly ride.
Very hilly this year. Very.
Regrets for not being able to attend, but great public and private investment in recreation, but fantastic mini pitch and grass tennis court. So I will also be gone next week, but I will be at Cub Scout camp.
I should say that.
I will be headed to there's an innovation project after the meeting, so there will be a quorum. All right, what was your
So just a real quick update. We did receive a invite from Mayor Chris Osborne. For next year, dates that as they have put on the calendar that don't work best for June 14th through the 17th. So 14th is on Monday. So if there is interest in pursuing a visit, official delegation visit, please let us know if you're able to do that. As we have to build that into next year's budget. And if you were to go, then you'd have to leave on Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon, here, evening out of Chicago, arrive here Sunday morning. Then they will transport the delegation by bus or vehicle down to Oslo, Frankfurt. Usually Frankfurt on Thursday. And go back, leave on Thursday, come back on Friday to Frankfurt, and be back on Saturday. Just kind of put that out of the minds for it. That did come in, I believe, right this week, somewhere.
Any other staff updates?
Yes.
I actually do, because I forgot to mention this. Does council want to get together again on CIP to review it, or are you comfortable in the past? Laura has written a resolution to come forward with you so she can start the design and engineering on the projects for 2027. Yeah,
I think we can follow past practice, yes.
and then of course, during the year, if there's ever any changes, we can always amend the budget. That does give her a jump. And then regarding the enterprise fees, are you comfortable, like what we've done in the past as well, to go ahead and start processing? There's 2 readings to the ordinance to get the fees increased prior to January of 1. This is only for enterprise funds. So we'll bring those forward and we'll kind of knock that out for the budget. I appreciate your patience.
Nice job for all 5 of you.
Yes. Everyone, it's a heavy lift. You have great staff.
All right, no executive session, need a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
By Castro, seconded by Schmidt, all in favor? Opposed? See you next week.